Take a look at almost any airport in the world. From massive intercontinental jets to smaller regional aircraft, one thing quickly stands out. Almost all airplanes are white. Airlines may add colorful logos, stripes, or designs, but the majority of the aircraft itself remains painted in plain white. This isn't a coincidence, it's not simply a design trend. And it's definitely not because white looks the most professional. In fact, the reason airplanes are almost always white has a lot to do with physics, economics, safety, and even maintenance. Choosing the wrong color could cost airlines millions of dollars every year. So the question is, why are airplanes almost always white? Airplanes operate in one of the harshest environments machines can face. They sit for hours under intense sunlight. They experience freezing temperatures at high altitudes. They endure rapid temperature changes between ground operations and cruising flight. And on top of that, they must remain extremely lightweight, efficient, and easy to maintain. Airlines operate on incredibly tight profit margins. Even small changes that affect fuel efficiency, maintenance costs, or aircraft lifespan can translate into huge financial impacts across an entire fleet. That means something as simple as the color of the paint on an airplane can actually matter a lot more than you might think. If airlines chose the wrong color, the consequences could include more heat absorbed by the aircraft, higher cooling costs, more damage to materials, more maintenance inspections, and even additional fuel consumption. So airlines needed a solution, and it turns out the simplest color was also the best one: white. To understand why white became the standard color for aircraft, we need to look back at the early days of commercial aviation. In the early decades of flying, many aircraft were not painted white at all. Some airlines experimented with polished aluminum finishes, while others used bright or colorful paint schemes across the entire aircraft. But over time, engineers and airlines began noticing something important. Certain colors cause the aircraft to heat up significantly more when sitting on the ground under the sun. Airports often have very little shade, and airplanes can spend hours sitting on runways or at gates exposed to direct sunlight. When aircraft surfaces absorb heat, that heat transfers into the cabin and internal components. This affects passenger comfort, electronic systems, structural materials, and maintenance cycles. Eventually, airlines realized that paint color had a measurable effect on aircraft performance and operating costs, and white paint turned out to provide several key advantages. The most important reason airplanes are white is simple physics. White reflects sunlight, while dark colors absorb sunlight. When an aircraft sits on the runway, sunlight constantly hits its surface. If the aircraft were painted dark blue, red, or black, the paint would absorb much more solar energy, and that absorbed energy becomes heat. White paint reflects most of that radiation away from the aircraft, keeping the airplane significantly cooler. And that matters more than you might expect. On hot days, a darker airplane could become several degrees hotter than a white one. That heat affects not just passengers, but also sensitive equipment and materials inside the aircraft. Keeping temperatures lower helps protect the aircraft and reduce cooling requirements. Aircraft materials constantly expand and contract due to temperature changes. When a plane sits in the sun, the outer surface heats up. Then when the plane climbs to cruising altitude, temperatures can drop dramatically, sometimes to -50 degrees Celsius. These rapid temperature shifts create stress on the aircraft's structure. If the airplane absorbs too much heat on the ground, the temperature difference between ground and cruise becomes even greater. White paint helps reduce these temperature swings. That means less expansion and contraction in the aircraft's materials. Over time, this reduces fatigue on the aircraft structure and helps extend the lifespan of the airplane. Airplanes also require extremely strict safety inspections. Technicians regularly check aircraft for cracks, dents, leaks, or other structural issues. White paint makes these inspections easier. Small cracks, corrosion, oil leaks, or other damage are much easier to spot on a light-colored surface. If the aircraft were painted dark colors, many small defects could be harder to see. That would make inspections more difficult and potentially less reliable. So white paint actually helps improve maintenance procedures and safety. Another factor that airlines consider is weight. You might not think about it, but aircraft paint adds weight. A full aircraft paint job can weigh hundreds of kilograms. Every additional kilogram increases fuel consumption, and airlines carefully optimize everything to reduce weight. White paint often requires fewer layers and less pigment than darker colors. That means slightly less weight. Across an entire fleet of aircraft, flying thousands of hours per year, even small weight savings can lead to significant fuel savings. For airlines, saving fuel means saving money. Airplanes also spend their entire lives exposed to sunlight and weather. Over time, ultraviolet radiation from the sun causes paint colors to fade. Bright colors like red, blue, or yellow fade much faster than white. White paint holds its appearance longer, which means airlines don't need to repaint aircraft as frequently. Repainting a large commercial aircraft can cost tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And while an aircraft is being repainted, it cannot be used for flights. So white paint helps airlines reduce maintenance costs and keep aircraft in service longer. Modern airplanes also use a large amount of composite materials such as carbon fiber. These materials are strong and lightweight, but they can be sensitive to temperature. White paint helps protect these materials from overheating. In fact, some aircraft manufacturers recommend avoiding very dark paint colors on large sections of the aircraft because of the additional heat they can generate. So white paint is not just a tradition. In many cases, it is actually recommended by engineers. At first glance, the reason airplanes are white might seem like a simple design choice. But in reality, it is the result of decades of engineering, economics, and practical experience. White paint reflects sunlight and helps keep aircraft cooler. It reduces thermal stress on the airplane's structure. It makes safety inspections easier. It weighs slightly less, helping improve fuel efficiency, and it fades more slowly, reducing maintenance costs. For airlines operating on tight margins, these advantages make a big difference. So while colorful designs and logos add personality to aircraft, the base color remains almost universally the same: white. Because in aviation, even something as simple as paint color can play a role in safety, efficiency, and performance. And the next time you look out the window at an airport full of airplanes, you will know exactly why they all look so similar.